So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our Core Vitae formation for leadership in the context of spirituality of the heart. And today, today, we are in our seventh session, penultimate session. Our topic for today, is the leadership of Father Jules Chevalier. What we do is we'll have first the introductory prayer and then the presentation by our speaker. Our speaker is known to us, to all of us. He is a member of the MSC General Council and at the same time, the liaison of Core Vitae formation team to the Tri-Generalate in Rome of the MSC, the Dolce, and the MSC Sisters. I would like to ask you to welcome our speaker for today, Father Chris Chaplin, MSC. I will turn you now over to Kathy for the introductory prayer.
Thank you, Ben. So we begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. May the Sacred Heart of Jesus be everywhere loved. Let us be mindful of the presence of one another via Zoom and be present to God who is with us. Then now lead us into this song played by James Ma, Two Hearts of Love.
Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus all heart, come to me, learn from me, I will give rest. My heart is gentle, my love is strong. Come to me, stay with me, learn how to love. Jules with a vision, Jules of Isudan, Jules on fire with hope and with love. Heart man and hope man, treading the slow way to the heart of the Lord. Jesus of Nazareth, we are your sisters, we are your brothers. Jules of Isudan, we are your daughters, we are your sons.
His heart and your heart beating in unison, two hearts but one heart in love.
Giving to our world the reason to live, giving to our are your sisters, we are your brothers. Jules of Isidon, we are your daughters, we are your sons. Jesus of Nazareth, Jules of Isidon, two men with one heart, a heart for our world. Pour into our hearts, pour out your message, a message of true love, a message of hope. Be now in our hearts, fill us with love. Jesus of Nazareth, make us your sisters, make us your brothers. Jules of Isidon, make us your daughters, make us your sons. All hearts as
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Chris, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you, Ben, for your welcome, and Kathy for the prayer and that beautiful song by James Marr. And I think it originally came from a poem written by Patrick Sharp, an Australian MSc. So a very fitting song to have at the beginning of today's session when we're reflecting on the life of Father Chevalier, and particular his sense of leadership, his call to found 3 congregations, a lay movement, his call to live as a man of great vision and mission dedicated to the heart of Jesus.
Okay.
So if I could invite you just to press your, mute button would be helpful. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Sister Cecilia, who's there among the sea of faces somewhere, for translating into Korean, because I think more than half of the group who are here are Korean. So welcome to everyone in Korea. 안녕하세요. And that's the only word I know, so don't get too excited. Welcome to everyone else too. So just looking at the screen, we have the Philippines, and we have Namibia, we have India/Japan, we have Papua New Guinea. Hello, Rosemary. We have Marshall Islands. Oh, no, that's not Marshalls. Yes, still Marshalls. And a few others. So welcome to you all. And the USA, I forgot about Ben. Welcome from the USA, Ben. And welcome to you all. We are going to now use the share screen. So give me a moment while I just bring onto screen the slides that I will use to help lead us today. Can you see that? Good, very good. Okay. So, welcome to this session, which is going to...
Jadi jenis kepiting nggak ada ya? Kosong.
Right. Is there a problem?
Thank you.
We're right now. Okay, thank you. So if we can, what we're going to do tonight, this morning, is look at leadership in the context of spirituality of the heart. This is the overriding theme of this series of webinars presented by Core Vitae. And I was asked in particular to focus on the leadership of Jules Chevalier. As I do that, I want to do a number of things. I want to say something about leadership and the context of spirituality of the heart, so that we have a clearer idea of what we're talking about when we come to talk about the leadership of Father Chevalier. So leadership in the context of the spirituality of the heart. By the way, all of the images, these bright coloured images in my slides, are from a former MSc, Anderson from Brazil. He painted these for the Jubilee of the congregation back in 86, I think it was. So these come from a very large painting that's in our recreation room here at the General House. So these are pieces from it. So this is what I would like us to reflect on. What do we mean by this statement? How do we understand the context of spirituality of the heart? If we're talking about leadership in this context, how do we understand that? What comes to our minds as we think of the context of spirituality of the heart? What would that mean for you? How would you understand that? What would leadership look like if it were shaped, moulded, fashioned by a spirituality of the heart? You might want to write down those questions, and I'm going to give you some time just in silence and personally to reflect on those questions prayerfully, perhaps even to ask Jesus, to ask the Sacred Heart. When you call us to leadership, Jesus, what are you calling us to? What are you asking of us? How would we understand that? What would it look like? So let's take some time to reflect. Let's take 10 minutes. I'm going to time us now, just for 10 minutes of silent reflection. Because I have a strong belief that we learn best when we start from our own experience. We learn best when we start from our own thoughts and assumptions about what this could mean. After the time of reflection, Kathy is going to put us into some groups, but I'll say more about that. So in 10 minutes, after I've introduced the breakout groups, Kathy will put us into groups for about 20 minutes. But for the moment, we're just going to reflect for 10 minutes. So let's do that now. Just take 10 minutes of quiet reflection for yourself on these questions. And it's always helpful to do so with a pen and paper, so that you can write down your thoughts and bring them to your group. Thank you. Thank you. So I hope you've had enough time just to reflect on those questions. And what I'd like to invite you to do is to go into groups and just to share what it is that came to you in that time of reflection, just to share your reflection with one another. Perhaps somebody in your group could then just bring back some points. It's not about coming back to the large group again to say everything that was spoken about in your group, but perhaps just one or two things to bring back for us all to hear from your group sharing. So we go, if Kathy, you're ready, we'll go into breakout groups where we ask you to share your reflections together. Thank you. What we would like to do, my apologies. Welcome back, everyone. And what we would like to do now is to take time to listen to somebody from each group. Just say one or two things that happened in your group, that were shared in your group. You don't need to say everything that was shared. It's just a matter of sharing one or two things that happened in your group, that were shared, that were spoken about in your group. So I'm going to ask the team to help me here a bit. If you can help me identify who is wanting to speak, and we might just spotlight them so that they're on screen with me. So who would like to go first? I'm assuming that Cecilia, you can probably translate for us both ways. Yeah. Who would like to begin? Get gallery view. Just put your hand up if you want to share. That will show us that you're wanting to say something, and we can then spotlight you. So Rolando has his hand up. If you would unmute your microphone, Rolando.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I am in the group 5 with Sister Lucia, Sister Maria Pong. They are from Rome. So first, what do we mean by this statement? It's actually we agree that it's we can only understand the leadership with a heart based on our spirituality. And then the context, so we can only understand the context by going to the heart of Jesus. Actually, he is our model. And then how it looks like. So with this, it's a leader with a listening heart, a compassionate leader. Although one thing that we reflect on is how we differ from the NGOs with us, no? As we really understand how we do it, because our very model is the heart of Jesus, and we do not know the models of the NGOs. And that's all, Father. That's
Okay,
all.
thank you very much, Rolando. Very good of you and your group to particularly to take us straight to the heart of Christ as the place we need to listen. Thank you. Is there somebody else who would like to share? Even if it's one of the Koreans and we don't have translation is okay, because at least the Koreans will get to hear something. Anyone else? Just put your hand up if you want to.
Dolsh Emin.
Dolsh, okay. Can you just spotlight them, please, Kathy, so that they can come and unmute your microphone?
Hello, good day to everyone.
Hello.
So I feel privileged to be here in Formation Community, and the people here were leaders. So this is what transpired in our talk, in our discussion, our lovely sharing. So for us, what does the statement mean? It begins and ends with the love of the heart of Jesus, we look at the heart of Jesus as the basis of leadership. So it is to lead in the spirit of love. And in understanding the context of the spirituality of the heart, we cannot understand the context if we ourselves don't experience love. And now, how would leadership look like in the context of the spirituality of the heart? It is the love and compassion that will bring about harmony towards the mission of the community. So to say, it is a life-giving leadership. That's it, Paul.
Salamat po. Okay, thank you to your group. We will now go to Sister Rosemary. Sister Rosemary has her hand up, so we're going to ask her to come on screen. And can you unmute yourself, please, Rosemary? That's it. You're right now. We'll just unmute you. We can't hear you yet, so just give us a moment to unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, we can hear you now.
All right.
Thank you.
The only three of us, Sister Paula, Sister Nicola, and myself. And we said, from the statement, we said, we living out the spirituality of the heart and the charism in our ministry. And first of all, by living out his presence, feeling his presence in our lives, in our selves. And then we minister to others authentically by living out the presence of God in our lives. But first of all, it depends on us, and we experience that first of all in our lives, and then we minister to others with that love of God by ministering in whatever ministry that we are engaged in living out the charism and the spirituality of the heart. So that is we were only talking about the statement and our own experiences. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, True, Rosemary. God bless you and your group. And again, going straight to the point about the spirituality of the heart being about coming directly to the heart of Jesus. Is there any other group that wants to say anything? Sister Noelin, sorry, my apologies, Sister Noelin.
That's all right. From my group, group 6, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. It's scratchy,
right.
But we can hear you.
From our discussion, we discussed that looking at the leadership in the context of the spirituality of the heart, and we summarized the 3 questions. It's about the love of the heart of Jesus. It is about love and compassion, and being leaders, we are to bring people together to experience what we ourselves have experienced and leading them to Jesus Christ. And it is about, we have to be the people of the heart. It doesn't matter where we are, what we do, and the language difference, language barriers. It is all about the heart of Jesus. It is about our heart connecting to the heart of Jesus and the hearts of the people we come in contact with. It's if we listen and do things with all our hearts, that is all matters. It's about being leaders according to the spirituality of the heart. And if we can attract people heart to heart or heart from heart, then our mission is accomplished. So it's all about the heart, the love of the heart of Jesus that we have experienced and wanting others also to experience. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Noel. And what country are you in?
Papua New Guinea.
Oh, Papua New Guinea. Thank you so much from PNG. And one of the words that I'm picking up that you're saying is the word listening. The importance of listening to one another, listening to the heart of Jesus. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Drew. Okay, so is there anyone else before we finish? Sister Dorothy. We can just spotlight you.
I was in the group with two Philippine brothers, Flo and Edwin, I think.
Yes, that's right.
And we had 3 points. The first point, listen to the hearts of Jesus, of myself, and of the other. The second point, empower for compassion.
Yes.
And another important point, it takes much time to listen to Jesus, to myself, and to the others.
Yes.
That's enough.
Thank you, danke. Again, we are hearing the same things, Sister Dorothy. Thank you so much for your sharing and the importance of being in a place of deeper listening, deeper, authentic listening, which leads to compassion. So thank you. Okay.
There are comments in the chat box.
Okay, so there are comments in the chat box. The Korean group 3 says the quality of the heart in leadership, like kindness, gentleness, caring, looking at everyone. Everything with love of the heart. So I like this, looking at everyone. Because what we forget sometimes is that leadership is about connection. Connecting to others. And then Sister Perpetua, who I think is from Namibia, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong there, a leadership led by the spirituality of the heart has a space for everyone and everything in love. Appreciate and empowers everything to grow towards love. That echoes what Sister Dorothy was just saying. And it also tells us about the importance of inclusivity, including everyone and everything in this field of love. Okay, thank you everyone for your feedback and for entering so beautifully into this time of sharing with one another and reflection, because it builds an important foundation for us to understand leadership in the context of the spirituality of the heart, but we're also talking about the leadership of Father Chevalier. This indeed is what the leadership of Father Chevalier was about. It was a deep place of listening, compassion born out of listening primarily to the heart of Jesus and being faithful to that, as we will see. So I'm going to go back to my slideshow. And if you can see that again, I hope. We now will move on to the next slide, which says something to us from the work of a man called Parker Palmer. He has an article called Leading from Within, and it was the subject of an article written by Sister Geraldine Doherty, one of our daughters, back in 2012. You can see the link for that article on the ongoing formation website for the MSCs. It's a very worthwhile article to read. But when I was preparing for this, I thought, now this is an excellent place for us just to stop and reflect for a moment, because we are talking about When we're talking about leadership within the spirituality of the heart, we are talking about leading from within. And so he reflects on 5 ways that spiritual leaders tend to cast shadow rather than light in their ministry of leadership. And this was at times true for Father Chevalier, as much as it might be true for any leader, any congregational leader, province leader, regional leader, community leader, or leader in a school or in any other context. There's always this challenge to live between the shadow and the light, to take up the light and to recognize our shadow. So as I move on, these are the 5 shadows that he highlights. He talks about that the leader's insecurity about their true personal identity and worth. So when a leader is concerned about themselves and whether or not they're doing a good job, whether or not they're living up to the role, the identity of a leader, that can become a shadow on their leadership because it creates anxiety, fear, insecurity. That means they get locked into a role. And we know, I'm sure we've heard already in these seminars, that one of the most important aspects of leadership is to understand that the leader is not the role. A leader has to perform functions, but they are not the functions. And good leadership comes from being authentically the person they are and not getting stuck in the role. If the leader is always telling you that they're the leader, then perhaps there is some insecurity because their sense of worth is dependent on the role rather than dependent on who they are in the heart of Jesus. Jesus loves the person. The role isn't something that is the focus of Jesus's love. We perform functions, we perform roles, but our worth is found in who we are in the heart of Jesus. The second shadow is a perception that the world is against humanity. And so when a leader feels like the world is against her or him, she needs to put herself on top, to make themselves important, to be in a position of power, because it's only in that position that you can conquer what is against you. But a good leader has a perception that the world is something friendly, something to be used, something that can complement leadership. A leader, even in problematic circumstances, in difficult times, can recognize that everything is gift and everything is blessing. Even a difficult member is a place of grace where the heart of Jesus can be at work. And so in healthy leadership, the leader doesn't have to be the one on top. The leader can lead from, we can say, behind or underneath. The leader can be in a place of listening without vulnerability. The third shadow is a belief that the leader is responsible for everything. This creates a scenario in which there is no room for anyone else, including God, because the leader has to do everything. The leader is in charge of everything. The leader controls everything. This is very unhealthy leadership. In fact, it's not really leadership. It's domination and control. None of us are responsible for everything. Only God is responsible for everything. And so healthy leadership, appropriate leadership, knows how to relax, trust in the capacities, the gifts of others, trust in the work that God is doing, even when we can't see what God is doing. Fourthly, the shadow that comes with the fear of chaos. This fear is fed by a strong sense of needing to have things organized and everything in order. When we have leadership that is really fixated, focused too strongly on order, it becomes protective to avoid the occurrence of any dissent. And here we don't mean dissent in the sense of open rebellion, but dissent simply as difference, diversity. Innovation becomes a threat. Challenge becomes a threat. And change becomes a threat. The fear of chaos causes us to shut down and pull together and get behind a wall of defensiveness. Good leadership, appropriate leadership, opens us up and isn't afraid of vulnerabilities, isn't afraid of differences, can handle easily the mess. Because healthy leadership understands that many, many good things come out of chaos. Many good things come out of change. It's a sign of, chaos is a sign of transformation, of conversion happening within the hearts of humanity. We don't like it. That's a different matter. But the fear of it and being protective around it is the danger. And the fifth one is a denial of death. And of course, here it's not so much the denial of our physical death at the end of our lives, but the denial of all those little deaths that are happening. Things like letting go of hurts. Healthy leadership can let go of hurts and not hold on to them and become resentful. Failure, health, control, success, cherished ministries, youthful energy. I'm now in my 60s and I'm probably in the older end of our congregational spectrum. And letting go of youthful energy and cherished ministries is difficult and hard. So leadership that denies these things can't move forward, can't find the mission, can't live to the mission, can't bring the grace and energy of the charism and spirituality to life. So here we have 5 shadows behind which leadership becomes unhealthy. Palmer's strong conviction, and what he goes on to write about, is that the inner journey, and we've described that as the journey into the heart of Jesus, is what can transform leadership in each of these 5 shadows. When the leader trusts in something bigger than herself, when she can see that God is in control, God is protecting us, God is looking after us, he can let go and let God do God's work. She or he can trust in her brothers, her sisters, and what they are doing, in their gifts, their talents. And when we look at the life of Father Chevalier and his leadership, we would have to say that he was deeply convinced of the power of the inner journey in his own life. And he describes this as the power of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, of devotion to the Sacred Heart, to transform society, to heal the mal moderne, the modern evils, the shadows of his own time, the shadows of our time. When we get stuck as leaders, when we get stuck in the outer presentation of our leadership, our performance, whether we are being successful in our leadership performance, when we are results focused, we move away from that deep interior place of transformation in the heart of Jesus. However, healthy leadership balances the outer with the inner, the interiority that is needed to stop and reflect before we act, to stop and reflect deeply on what is happening within myself, in my own character. Am I living out of an authentic sense of myself and what I believe and how I personally hold the spirituality of the congregation, the charism of Father Chevalier? When we live this inner space with great trust and authenticity, in confidence in who God has created us to be, it's then that we can face the issues that are presented to us. We can trust in our abilities and skills and the abilities and skills of others. When we do this, we are living out of what a man called Ronald Heifetz, whose name is there on the bottom left-hand corner, in his theory of leadership called adaptive leadership, he says that we are living out of a technical form of leadership where we bring our abilities and skills to fore, to enable change to happen from what we know, from what we trust in, from our confidence within our own abilities. But he says this also is not enough. And the 4th quadrant here is what he calls adaptive leadership. Because for Father Chevalier, everything he did was new. No one had created the Congregation of the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart or the Daughters of Our Lady of the Sacred Heart before. When France and Germany were at odds with each other and Father Chevalier instructed Father Lincolns to go and found the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, no one had done that before. When he sent missionaries to Quito in Ecuador, to Papua New Guinea, to Watertown, sisters to these places. When he was building up the lay archconfraternity of the Sacred Heart, or the secular priests of the Sacred Heart, all of these initiatives were new. He didn't know what particular abilities or skills he had to bring, but he trusted in the authenticity of what God was calling him to, and so he adapted to all of these circumstances. Adaptive leadership means that we have to be constantly aware of what is emerging, what the Spirit of God is putting in front of us. And as we do, we build up competence. And in Father Chevalier, we see over many years that he becomes a great leader. He develops the competence and influence that he needs in order to be a good leader. And we will see shortly some examples of that. So in the leadership, in the context of the spirituality of the heart, we could perhaps identify the following things. Leading from within a spirituality of the heart means an active interior life that is not dependent on externalities. External realities are important. It's the world we live in, but we should not be dependent on them. Should we focus on what dress we have or what religious symbolism we wear, what particular roles that we're in, or how well and how accepted we are by people, that we have important relationships that make us feel important or feel loved or worthwhile. These things are not as important as a really deeply developed interior life. In fact, I can't remember in the constitutions and statutes of the OLSH or the MSC sisters, but I know in the MSC constitutions, in the first chapter, it says very clearly that we must have a deep interior life. This is absolutely crucial to the leadership in the context of spirituality of the heart. Secondly, we need to be people of heart. We're not missionaries, the Sacred Head, or daughters of Our Lady of the Sacred Head. We're people of heart. We are people who connect with the humanity of Jesus. We're not denying his divinity, but his heart is a place of connection to the humanity of God and to the humanity of all people, living out of that humanity for the world. Thirdly, humanity. My spirituality, if I'm leading from within a spirituality of the heart, is one with my humanity. I'm not disconnected from the divinity in my own life. So healthy leadership in a spirituality of the heart is incarnational. It brings the sacred and the human together, the human and the spiritual together, the divine and the human natures of Jesus together. This is the humanity out of which we are called to lead. Humor is another aspect of the spirituality. It's a place of redemption. You know, when we forget to laugh, when we get too serious, it's then that we really need to stop and ask ourselves what we're really on about. Because once we stop enjoying and bringing joy, the joy of the gospel into the world, we become too self-focused. We start worrying about how well we are doing what we're doing. We become caught up in ourselves. Humor is a place of hope. It's a place of groundedness for our own self-image, especially when we can laugh at ourselves. Again, in our constitutions, it says that we are to be men of humour. And please God, that's in the constitutions of all of our congregations. That we are, and we're renowned for being, people of good heart, light-hearted about life. Leading from within is about transformation from within. Because we understand that when we are transformed from within, the world around us begins to change. I change to meet the mission rather than expecting the mission to change to meet me. This is a place of great difficulty in our congregations, in our family today, because many of us get caught up in needing to change the mission, to change the world around us, hoping that it will meet our needs rather than us being at the service of the mission itself. And so we should always value highly interior transformation, changing our attitudes, changing our perceptions and judgments. Humility is a really important value that is a part of a spirituality of the heart, service of something greater than myself, that I can put myself after others. I can put myself, hopefully, after God and not before God. After I can follow the heart of Jesus. Certainly, this was one of the greatest qualities seen in Father Chevalier, a man of extraordinary humility. And this is written about by many people in the works on Father Chevalier. Father Piperon particularly spoke about the deep humility in the person of Father Chevalier. Empathy, the capacity to stand in the world of another with compassion. When we can be empathic leaders, it means that we don't have to force people. We can lead them from places of understanding and compassion, of love, and hopefully help them to make good decisions because they know they are supported by leadership, not the cynical approach of leadership that doesn't trust in the capacities of others, but one that, with compassion and love, urges other people on. Again, we see this profoundly in the life of Father Chevalier. Action. Good leadership, of course, is about action, about making things happen. It flows from a deeper felt connection and conviction. So it takes us back to the beginning of this list again. But action is not the first step. Good leadership doesn't start with action. It begins in contemplation, in adoration. Then it moves to communion, and then it takes us into action. And if you remember, this comes from the Sulpician spirituality, which was highly influential on Father Chevalier's life in his time in the seminary. And the last point here is that, as was Father Chevalier, leading from within a spirituality of the heart asks us to go out and share the good news of God's love for all creation. Hopefully there is something on fire within us that sends us out, that we want to share it, that we want to go out, that helps us to leave ourselves and move out to others. Okay, so these are characteristics of the context of spirituality of the heart, and they're all things that you have shared from your reflection. The movements of the heart. We start with what is appreciating, what is there. This is part of the deep process of listening that you talked about. When we listen deeply, it takes us to the possibilities. What could be? What is possible? And we call this envisioning. Envisioning a future full of love, full of hope, full of encouragement and empowerment. This takes us to the question, okay, there are many possibilities, but according to our charism and spirituality, what should be? What should we do? This is the place of building together, co-constructing, building those possibilities that are authentically ours. And this leads us to act what will be, sustaining, building together from the vision of the heart what sustains life and sustains the mission in the world. We have 4 words for these movements, which are the movements of a spirituality of the heart. Encounter, intimacy, conversion or transformation, and mission. You'll be familiar with those 4 movements, I'm sure. Certainly, if you've ever heard me speak before, you will have heard them before. So what kind of leadership are we looking at? Well, I just want to take some things from our constitutions and statutes, and I apologise to the MSE sisters and the daughters. I don't have copies of your constitutions, but if you'd like to send them to me, I'll prepare myself for next time. But for the moment, just to take from ours, some things about leadership, the kind of leadership that we take from Father Chevalier and that we embody in our own congregation. So the society, number 8 says, the society needs clear norms of government to accomplish its mission, and this is the important part, to help each member grow in her or his vocation. That is so important. That is at the center of what we are about. This is what leadership is about, helping each member to grow in their vocation. These norms should enable all members to, and this is the important part, exercise their responsibility for promoting the life and mission of the society. This is so important because remember the shadow in which the leader thinks everything is their responsibility. No. Good leadership should be encouraging all members to be responsible for the life and mission of the society. This is not the work of leadership. This is the work of membership, and leadership enables this to happen. So these 2 things are crucial in the kind of leadership we are looking at. Next, number 99, authority in the society should be understood in the light of our charism and spirit. So we should have a deep sense, what is our charism? What is our spirit? And you spoke about that in your feedback, in your sharing from the groups. So these are some key points that are related to that. Promoting unity. We could ask ourselves, did Father Chevalier do these things? Are we doing this? Did he promote unity? Absolutely. Even when there were difficult times and even in cases where members were being very divisive, very divided in their behavior, he kept promoting communion. He absolutely believed in it. The sense of belonging. Well, this is crucial crucial to us. Otherwise, we feel alone and isolated rather than a part of a family that holds us, supports us, and empowers us. Support the spiritual and human growth. Again, this is absolutely crucial to the leadership we are looking at, because if we are not growing, how can we enable others to grow in ministry, to carry out the mission effectively? Imitating him. Here we go, back to Jesus, back to the heart of Jesus, imitating him, who came not to be served, but to serve, mindful of his responsibility. We should be convinced of the need for open and fraternal sisterly dialogue. In recent times, we have been focusing on communal wisdom as a way of building communion, as a way of building mission, participation in mission. The church has focused on this in its work on synodality, that we become, the Pope has asked us to be a synodal church where we build the mission together. So good leadership enables this. Putting the talents and gifts of all of us at the service of others and the mission. Well, that has to start by recognizing the talents and gifts of others. Three things that are crucial to this are subsidiarity. We all know this word. It was very important to the Second Vatican Council, where authority enables subordinate authorities to act freely within their sphere of competence. In other words, co-responsibility, a genuine acceptance of subsidiarity challenges us to assume responsibility for fostering the life and mission of the mission. And accountability. We know what accountability is. It's very much about subsidiarity and co-responsibility. This is what we're looking for in leadership, and what we were looking for in the leadership of Father Chevalier. And he reflects this to us in so many ways. Finally, just to say that to govern means above all to give life and unity to a community. So we're really talking about, when we're exploring the leadership of Father Chevalier, we're talking about servant leadership, leading with Jesus, leading with insight, leading through others. When we see Father Chevalier's leadership, we often see him sending out others while he stays behind. A particular instance is when the French authorities expelled the missionaries from Issoudun. He didn't go with them. He stayed in Issoudun. He trusted them to go to the Netherlands and to continue the work. When he needed to found a congregation of sisters in Germany, he didn't do that himself. He trusted Father Lincoln's to do that work. And so the MSC sisters were born, leading through others and leading through relationships. As we will see shortly, Father Chevalier was a man who really believed in the power and influence of relationships in leadership. And he led the journey. The journey is something. It wasn't just leading in organizational sense. He had a sense of the great vision that was ahead, the journey that was ahead. And so there is leading with awareness of self and others, facilitating growth and enabling others to achieve their full potential, not my full potential, but their full potential, fostering communication and a collaborative spirit, and sharing vision and guiding change. And all of this is what we call a Christ-centered servant leadership. And I would claim, and I think you could easily see, that Father Chevalier led from the point of view of a Christ-centered servant leadership. So what can we say about the leadership of Father Chevalier? I don't know if you recognize this image, but this is an image from the funeral of Father Chevalier. It's in Issoudun, and it's said that at his funeral, everyone was present. He was so deeply loved, he was so deeply admired and respected that the whole town and many other people from around turned up. Priests and leaders in the church all came for his funeral. To me, that says that he as a leader received enormous respect, that he was greatly admired for the way he led in ministry as well as within the congregations that he founded or helped found. Mother Marie-Louise Hartzer says in the year of Father Chevalier, at the time of Father Chevalier's death, when she writes to the daughters, the ceremonies were in every way worthy of him, and all Issoudun seemed impregnated with regret and respect. It's written that many people stood there weeping. So much did they love him, so much did they know he loved them, a true disciple of the heart of Jesus. So when we looked at Father Chevalier, we could also look at the story of his going to meet the Curé of Ars. This story that I'm putting up now, I don't expect us to read it, but when you look at the slides later, if you haven't read this story, you can read it here. But this is simply the story. I'm going to move through it quickly because I don't have a lot of time. But this is simply the story of how he got to go to meet the curé. And I'll just take this last line here. I don't know if you can see my arrow or not. Oh, I can use the annotate. I can use the annotate. Here. So just down here at the bottom, it says, he went and knocked on the door, and a priest came to the door in a rather angry tone of voice and he inquired if it would be possible to see the curé. No, he replied irritably. All we get here are inopportune priests asking the same thing. The curé is not receiving visitors. Then he closed the door. Well, I'm sure for Father Chevalier, that must have been a shock. It says then, I was bitterly disappointed and began to make my way to the church with my head bowed down and tears coming to my eyes. We then go on to the story as it continues. That he had only gone a few yards when he heard the voice calling after him. And the priest says to Father Chevalier, please apologize. Please forgive me for my bad manners. We're so disturbed every minute of the day. I couldn't control my annoyance. Well, how many leaders do you know come from that place, their place of annoyance? Rather, Father Chevalier didn't get annoyed. He was incredibly patient. And he was patient in this instance too. He came in and he was humble enough to stop and listen to the curé who said to him the following. He told me my trials, which I would feel keenly, had only just begun. The powers of hell, he said, would do everything to try to destroy the work and its object, the salvation of souls, the glory of God. He warned me that the agents of hell would raise such fury against the work that at times we would think it must fail. However, the heart of Jesus and the Mother of God would intervene to the confusion of its enemies. So Father Chevalier asked him to make a novena, which he did. And of course, as we know, the curé died not long after Father Chevalier returned to Issodun. But what's really important in this story is the attitude of Father Chevalier. It tells us that Father Chevalier knew that he had to be dependent on the power of God, dependent on the power of the heart of Jesus, and that he needed to go to a holy man, the curé of Ars, to seek intercession from God in order to do what needed to be done. He also knew that it would be a very, very difficult task. But we don't see Chevalier pulling away. We see him persevering, trusting, continuing, and walking the journey that God has put before him. This is extraordinary leadership. So let's look at some of those qualities in Jules Chevalier. Chevalier was the good shepherd with a new heart for a new world. His leadership is seen in his charism, his spirituality, and mission. He was a man with a profound understanding of the human conditions of his time. He was a man possessed by the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. He was a man of profound interior life of prayer and courage. He was a man of wisdom. When I first saw this word, letters and wisdom, I thought, in fact, Father Chevalier wasn't highly educated, but he was a man who tried to remain deeply informed. He was certainly a man of extraordinary wisdom. He was a man with a vision, a man of action, a man of the church, a man of the poor and the little ones, a man for all creation, of all creation. A man with a profound love for his communities, I should say, and the religious congregations he founded. And he was a man of collaborative leadership. He didn't do things on his own. He worked right from the beginning. You'll remember when he was in the seminary even, he developed a friendship with Father Mogenet and Father Piperon, and he worked collaboratively with them right from the very beginning. Let's just tell some stories. Let's look at some examples of each of these, just to finish with. As a good shepherd, Father Henry Vermin, the biographer of Chevalier in 1957, wrote some of the following things. He developed a calm and patient nature, awaiting the fulfillment of God's will. Ever before him was the person of Jesus, the high priest. He sought to make himself another Christ, to be shepherd of souls as he was, and to be prepared to endure hardships, even death itself, for his sake. He also says, Chevalier is particularly taken by the idea of Christ as the Good Shepherd. He devotes a number of his meditations to different aspects of this theme. So Chevalier himself could see that in imitating Jesus, who was the Good Shepherd, meant that he too had to be a good shepherd for others. Verman also writes, since the image of Christ, the Good Shepherd, was one which Chevalier loved, it was natural that he would use it to indicate the way his missionaries should serve, with the operative charity of Christ for all people, and especially with that immense mercy towards the lost sheep. And so, as Good Shepherd, we see not only Chevalier imitating Jesus, who is the Good Shepherd, but that each one of us is also to be, in Chevalier's mind, is called to be like him, the Good Shepherd. A man with a profound understanding of the human condition of his time. Well, let's remember the words of Chevalier himself 2 years after the foundation of the MSC. 2 wounds are corrupting our unfortunate world: indifference and selfishness. An effective remedy is needed that can be applied to these 2 evils. This remedy is found in the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who is simply love. Men, women will be needed who will work to make him known. They will bear the name missionaries of the Sacred Heart, daughters of Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, missionary sisters of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, and, as we now know them, lay members of the Chevalier family. So Chevalier was profoundly connected to the troubles of his time, the deep condition of the humanity that surrounded him. There are many, many stories of Chevalier answering the door, almost in imitation of the Curé of Ars, meeting the many, many needs, the human needs of the people of Isidon and the surrounding countryside of Berry. People would come to him, asking him for favours, asking him for money. Many of these things people never knew about, but again, they are written about in the writings of Chevalier, in the writings about Chevalier. He was a man possessed by the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Again, he writes, though composed of different members, humanity is formed by one same body and blood, the unam corpus multi sumus. Though we are many, we are one body. The heart which gives life to all the members of this great body is the heart of Jesus. He alone unites us together, and he alone unites us to God. As soon as we separate ourselves from him, we separate ourselves from one another, and we lose the true feeling of human fraternity by losing the life of God, which is its source. This divine heart is then the center around which all hearts gravitate. And I love this image of Chevalier because it's almost like the axis mundi, the pin around which the whole world, perhaps the whole universe, rotates, gravitates, is the heart of Jesus. This is very much the spirituality and mysticism of the great science priest, Teilhard de Chardin. Chevalier, in many ways, was possessed by the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I would add here Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, who he saw as so central to that pivot around which the Sacred Heart itself exists. Doubtless, a member must take into consideration the sort of positions he or she holds, but more consideration has to be given to the poverty of Jesus Christ, whom he professes to take as leader and model, who he or she takes as leader or model. So each one of us is asked to come into the poverty of that heart, because that poverty is the richness of God. And in that poverty, we find the richness of the leader and model, Jesus himself, who leads us. Chevalier was a man of prayer and courage, a man of the deep interior life, a man who lived from within. People should see in the missionary a great spirit of prayer and good example. He will gain more fruit in this way than with all the knowledge and eloquence he might be able to use. We are not Dominicans or Jesuits. We don't try to win people over with our knowledge and eloquence. We win people over through the heart, through the humanity, through connection. Meditation, deep interior life, will draw into him or her an abundance of graces and give unction, bring life and sweetness and healing to all he or she says. His or her good example will dispose minds and hearts to welcome what they communicate after he himself has received it from God, or she herself has received it from God. A man of letters and wisdom, particularly wisdom. Chevalier writes that leaders, in this case the term that's used is superior, but leadership must be wise, prudent, spiritual, enlightened, above all in the science of the saints, constant, earnest, without affectation, firm, but without severity, kind, without being soft, likable, but unassuming. To these qualities of mind and heart, he will add love and prayer and meditation, application to work, and the earnest practice of humility, zeal, and charity. So we hear his wisdom, we hear the wisdom of Chevalier in what he is writing about. He talks about observance to the rule and faithfulness to that, and giving example, being impartial, unprejudiced, animated by faith, guided by great purity of intention. The leader will use his or her authority only for the glory of God and the good of society. What a big challenge that is, only for the glory of God and the good of the society. He will never act on whim, but always with wisdom and discretion. He was a man with vision. On the founder's fidelity in corresponding to the lights given by the Holy Spirit will depend the success or the failure of this enterprise. Chevalier's vision corresponded to the lights that were given to him by the Holy Spirit. Even at the age of 30, ordained only 3 years and appointed to the parish of Issoudun, he knew already that here in this place, in this unlikely place, his true life's work could really begin. It is wrong perhaps to speak of his dream, for he was a young man with a sense of mission. But we could, in fact, simply state that this mission, even though it followed a winding pathway, was simple and clearly seen for him. His clarity was extraordinary. He could see that humanity's greatest need, if he was to find meaning and happiness in life, was to learn to believe in God's love for him and to let that transform his life. Christ's whole work was about this. He was sent by the Father to do this, to bring man to this belief, man, woman to this belief. Chevalier was convinced that he was called to make this mission known. You can read the rest later when you get the PowerPoint. These are thoughts that were taken from the work of Father Jim Cuskely, the former Superior General who wrote that beautiful book, Man with a Mission. When he wondered where to begin, he thought naturally enough of regions of indifference he actually knew of, and Isidon immediately came to his mind. So this was the vision that took shape in his mind from the years of his time of study until later. He himself, beginning as a shoemaker, an apprentice shoemaker, but becoming something of a crusading spirit that had infectious enthusiasm for the cause of Christ. He was a man of action. He was active in nature. There are many, many stories of Father Chevalier constantly being on the move, constantly acting on things. He wasn't a man of procrastination or who let things be. He was always constantly looking for ways of enabling the mission to be led ever more completely, more fully. He was a man of the church, and there is some very beautiful things written about him, about the relationships he had with members of the church, not just the lay people around Isidon, but cardinals and archbishops, particularly Cardinal Dupont and Archbishop Menjol, who deeply appreciated his work and favoured its growth. Later, the Prince Archbishop, and I can't speak French, so I'm not even going to attempt to say his name. I'm sure I would make an awful mess of it. But the friendship that this man had with the MSC and with Father Chevalier was such that it led him to say later on at the funeral of the Archbishop Menjol, "Tell me, could a founder have done more than he did for you?" So the founder, the Archbishop himself, did much for Father Chevalier himself, much for the congregation. Father Chevalier had these connections in the church. He was incredibly faithful to the church. He was a man of the poor and the little ones. He always was a man of wide vision, and his love of Jesus made him undertake great works, after the example of the Master Jesus himself. He always had a preference for the poorest and most forsaken. The poorest are all those who do not know Christ. This particularly was an important point for Chevalier, those who do not know Christ and the poverty of spirit that surrounded him. Again, when at last in 1881, the Holy See proposed the evangelization of Melanesia and Micronesia, Father Chevalier accepted joyfully. And he did this because he believed that the good news should be shared to the poorest among the poor. And he considered Melanesia and Micronesia poor only because they did not know Christ. Also, the foundation in Quito, in Ecuador, very early in the life of the congregation, was to the poorest of the poor. So his outreach to the poor was not only amongst those in France at his time, around Isidon, in the area of Berry, but also to the mission fields way beyond. He was a man of all creation. So let us just take two things that he writes in his own book, The Sacred Heart of Jesus. The word issuing from the heart of the Father has called forth the world from nothingness, and from the heart of the world incarnate, pierced on Calvary, I see a new world, a world of the elect, and this creation full of grandeur and fecundity, inspired by love and mercy, is the church. This mystical body, which will perpetuate Christ on earth until the end of time. Let us remember that his sense of this new creation, he says the church, but he's not talking about the institutional church. He's talking about the mystical church, the mystical body, which is much bigger than the institution. Again, we hear reflections of what was later taken up in Teilhard de Chardin. Today still, God sees the entire world recapitulated in Christ, who is the full and living expression of all creatures, in the adorable person of the heart of Jesus, the whole of Jesus, and the love of Christ, living and glorious, the heart of Jesus. For Chevalier, so central to the person of Jesus is the work of creation and to the mystery of salvation, that it is this sacred bond which links heaven and earth and knits the whole creation to Christ, from whom it emanates, the center of all that exists. And so we go to just a couple of points left. A man with a profound love for his community and the religious congregations he founded. Well, simply there are many examples, but this comes from, again, from Marie-Louise Hartzer. He left us, Father Chevalier left us his counsels, his memory, his example, for our sanctification, that one day heaven may be his crown and our crown. So as he was, let us be humble, very humble like him. Let us be good and affable towards everyone, and all things to all, so as to win all to Jesus Christ. Let us be generous in sacrifice and unceasingly forgetful in self, in favour of others. As our good Father, Father Chevalier, let us have a passion for the heart of Jesus, a passion for Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, and a passion for souls. Imitating his example, we shall reach our goal of eternal happiness. And Chevalier writes, inasmuch as possible, the leader will never make his authority felt by his brothers and sisters. He will not treat them in a domineering way, but with kindness, gentleness, love, and cordiality. And finally, just to say something about Chevalier as a man of collaborative leadership. The good of the whole society is in our hands. For the perfection of its members and the strength of the whole institute depends on these rules, the guidelines of the constitutions, the statutes being well observed. Therefore, let us, and when he's talking about our and us, he's talking about all of us collaboratively, act that the work we have completed may be truly a source of light for our congregation, a source of water that will spring up to eternal life. So we started with the reflection on leadership in the context of a spirituality of the heart. And we reflected on Father Chevalier in that light. And what I would like to finish is with the words that we started with from Parker Palmer. The inner journey can transform leadership. My sisters and brothers, thank you for listening to me and journeying with us together. Perhaps as we reflect on his leadership, we will value those qualities in ourselves and be willing to undertake them and model ourselves on them also, starting from a deep interior journey. Thank you, everyone. Blessings for the day, and may the Sacred Heart of Jesus be everywhere loved forever.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for this great journey that you allowed us to participate the journey towards leadership with the heart, in the context of the spirituality of the heart, the leadership of Father Jules Chevalier. You started by allowing us to listen to each other and then pulling together all our insights and lead us to the appreciation of the five, the leading from within and the shadows and the light. And from there, we move towards the four movements, from appreciating to envisioning, from sustaining to building together, which corresponds to the four movements of our spirituality of the heart: encounter, intimacy, conversion, transformation, and mission. And you gave us some examples in our rules, in our life. And then you led us to the leadership of Father Jules Chevalier, the Good Shepherd, with a new heart for a new world. Father Chevalier, who had a profound understanding of the human condition, possessed by the Sacred Hearts, a man of prayer and courage, a man of letters and wisdom, with a vision, action, a love for the church, for the little ones, for all of creation, a profound love for his community, and collaborative leadership. You have led us to the sources of our leadership in the context of spirituality of the heart. Thank you very much. We thank everyone in the name of the Core Vitae Formation Team of Kathy and Cecil. We thank everyone. And this lecture, this presentation of Chris will be found also in our YouTube channel, Core Vitae Formation Team. Sister Kathy?
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. You've said it's all. And so, Chris, thank you so much for your time to be with us. And we hope to continue to see you again in the near future. Thank you again to all the participants and to the team, to Ben and Cecilia. Thank you so much. And so our last session will be next week, 8. So that will bring us to COVID's program for this year online. So we hope to see you all next week. And that will be our last session. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Cecilia. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you, Chris.
Kamsahamnida.